Again, welcome to VFX with Natron. This episode is going to be talking uh, about Star Wars Day and May the 4th. And anyway, uh, so um, I've been filming all day today. As you know, I'm in the middle of a move, and I've been filming all day today, trying to put together a little video for May the 4th. Which the goal of May the 4th, I was hoping today's video was going to be about doing lightsabers, but it turns out I didn't have time to get into doing the lightsabers because to do the video, I usually do multiple takes and so forth, and then I edit things down, and then in various things. And one of the things I did today is I needed a very wide angle shot for one of the things. And so why don't I'll pop over into Natron and I'll show you the shot. So here we are, Natron, and I'm gonna just chuck in. I don't know if this is the right one. We'll just chuck in anyone. We'll grab we'll grab this one right here. This one is probably not the final one. Whoa, that's actually a really bad one. Actually, let's pull back and yuck. Let's get one like this. There we go. That was one with the white balance wasn't set right. That was an early on one. Anyhow, so here we go. Here's a shot. This was a wide angle shot. This was a shot that I was hoping to have today for to sort of go over doing. I don't want to make sure that the live stream is going. Yes, the live stream is going. Yes. All right. So the goal behind this was to get this to originally to do lightsabers, but the problem I ran into with with this was that I can't. All right, I need to explain some things. First of all, I work with a group that has. Well, currently, I work with the group. This is going to change in the not so distant future. I've been working with a group that has access to various cinema cameras, Reds, higher and black magic cameras, some Sony cameras, etc. So and so forth. Anyway, so for my own personal stuff, I only need to use my own little, micro cinema camera, which I've had for years and years and years and years, and love the thing to death. This is a great little camera. But it's a Super 16 camera, and it is which means it's a very small sensor. So this presents some problems, as people might know, or people may not know. With tiny cameras, or with cameras with tinier sensors, it becomes more difficult to get wider and wider angle lenses that fit the camera. So with Super 16, because there was a long period of time where people actually filmed with it using C-mount lenses, there are a whole lot of C-mount lenses out there that are Super 16 wide-angle lenses, but there are not for Micro Four Thirds, which is what this particular camera has. So I used an adapter and adapted a cinema lens, or it's not necessarily really a cinema lens, but it's close to a cinema lens, but it's a C-mount lens to work with this. So that produced this image. This is a 6.5 millimeter f1.4 lens, which is really ridiculously wide by most standards, but it's also not overly wide from the standpoint of it's only about the equivalent full frame of about an 18 millimeter, which is actually for a full frame sensor, that is actually really wide. But anyways, they're also really good for doing into wide angle lenses like this of this magnitude, are really good for doing inside of houses and so forth. But this particular lens I purchased years ago when there wasn't a really good Micro Four Thirds option out there, and not all C-mount lenses are built equivalent and fit the sensor to cover this the format, and they can fit the format. There's ones out there that can fit the format, but they don't always adapt to MFT, which is micro four thirds. So it's a real tricky thing. It's a balancing act, finding something that will fit the mount and the mount adapter, while at the same time, you know, covering the entire sensor. It's a tricky shuffling game. Anyway, this happens to be one of the cheapest options out there that got me what I needed. But the problem is as we can see, this suffers from a bit of what's called barrel distortion. And you can see here, this is barrel distortion. Let's explain what barrel distortion is. So with lenses, you have what are called rectilinear lenses, where everything is basically horizontal and vertical, all the lines going across it. When they go across, or they look like they're going straight, that would be rectilinear. Anytime you see a rectangle, it will be, the lines look like they're going, you know, relative to the direction that they are. Whereas when you get to fisheye, which is the opposite extreme, you wind up with this what's called massive barrel distortion. And what the barrel distortion is it pushes the lines away from the center point of the lens. So this suffers from a little bit of barrel distortion. This is not fisheye. This is fairly rectilinear. And the real problem you run into with fisheye lenses is if you get too wide, if you get too distorted, without retaining any rectilinear fashion, you'll distort the image. When you try to correct for it, you will lose so much information that the image just breaks down when you get to the corners and so forth. So the goal is to get it as close to rectilinear as possible, preferably rectilinear, and then, you know, and then deal with it if you can't get it with lens correction. So this, obviously, this lens has is very wide angle, and it's approximately, I think I already said it in this episode, this is approximately the equivalent of full frame 18mm, which is very wide angle, and it would allow us, and we can see here that the distortion's happening out on the side. So the way that I have this set up, I use a product that's actually designed for stabilization mostly, called StatXP. This is a StatXP. Let's see if I can glimpse. It's a little bitty box that plugs into certain types of cameras, like cinema cameras and various stuff. And anyway, StatXP does a lot of has a lot of things that it can do in addition to stabilization. It can also do lens correction. So I usually use it for it because it's all you can calibrate your lenses and so forth. And I've done lens calibration, and I've had lots of people ask me to teach how to do lens calibration inside of it, which I could do, but that has nothing to do with today. But the problem is that I had hoped for today to take all these shots that I had done and go through them, and unfortunately, because I recorded them this morning, I don't have them lens corrected, and I don't have them, I didn't do it inside of StatXP. So I'll just have the raw footage. I did color grade it, I did export it, but it has not been corrected, and it uses a special little soundtrack, the synchronizing soundtrack thing, sort of like time code, for this module, that for the StatXP, to fix it. Anyway, long story short, so this means that I don't have it ready to do this lightsaber. Where, what was the lightsaber going to be? Well, basically over here, you can see I'll walk over here, and at one point I just draw my sword, and instead of drawing a regular sword, I'm supposed to actually draw a lightsaber, although this was actually a bad take, because I realized I didn't acknowledge the fact that it was a lightsaber, which would have been pretty darn apparent when I pulled it out. And I'm not going to do a lightsaber tracking on something that is not lens corrected. So I figured, you know what we can do today? Instead of doing the lightsabers, let's just, or chatting with people about whatever inside of inside of the live stream, which is supposed to be an open general chat, but nobody's here because I failed the first round. What we're going to do instead is we're going to go over talking about lens correction inside of Natron. This is just a nice, easy topic for today. We have a distorted thing. Let's fix it. How would we fix this? Now, I'm going to tell you to do this properly. What you would do is you would take your camera and you would take it and have whatever lens you're going to have on it, and you would not have image stabilization on, at least not by default. You want to keep your cameras pointed as perfectly perpendicular as possible. Well, in most situations you want it perfectly perpendicular, unless you have, oh, I don't want to get into, keep it perfectly perpendicular, and you would get a grid, and you would take the grid and you would use the grid to align your lens, and you would sit there and you would see how the grid distorted based off of where you're pointing at. And you would do several tests. You could do some angle tests and make sure you can line the stuff up and make sure that your distortion holds true throughout however you turn your camera lens. Basically what you want to make sure of is that when you turn your lens, that the lines that are turn rectilinear stay rectilinear. That's why you use this sort of grid. It's actually a checkerboard. It's very much like the checkerboard inside of Natron. And we could technically, we could do that. That might be something that might help to get the process. So if we did a checkerboard, let's do that. If we chalk in a checkerboard here, and we looked at this checkerboard, all right, let's just assume, let's for the moment assume that we don't have a center line in it, and that the backgrounds were actually black, usually because they're a dark black color, and then the others would be sort of a whitish color. You'd never get perfect white, but whatever, that's fine. We can see, so here we go. This is what you would normally have, and so what you would have is you would have some form of distortion. So if we type in lens distortion, and we were to grab this and blah, let's pretend that was like that, and then we squeeze it and we pull that out, and we can we'll add some distortion here. This is not really good. This is just boop. All right, well, we're doing all kinds of weirdness anyway. You know what, this is not the best. I'm not used to adding distortion to something in here, but anyway, let's pretend this was the distortion. Let's zoom this in a little bit. Let's put a transform on here. So if we transform this, scale this up just a smidge, there we go. Let's just say, all right, let's say that was the lens distortion. All right, that's not really good because we don't have, hold on, we need to remove the squeeze because I don't want the squeeze. Let's keep that at 1. So here we go. So this right here is called barrel distortion. And what we're seeing is that it's barrel. It looks like a barrel. It looks like that's barrel distortion. We wind up with barrel distortion on both ends. And the way you would correct it is you would add a lens distortion or node. So we type in lens distort. Right, we got to type it right. Lens distortion. There we go. And then what we would do is we would use these K1 and K2 variables, and we would just basically start dragging these up and down. So as we can see, as I drag this off to the right, we can see it starts correcting it. And we would try to fix it by getting this so that it matches. And what we wanted to do is we want to try and get it to match in a way that everything looks, not only horizontal and vertically correct, but we want the checkerboards to be as close as possible. Now you would, whoa, whoops, too much, whoa, we want, all right, let's reset that to default. There we go. We would pull this back a little bit. Actually, we would just grab this. So what happens is that the K1 usually does does large amounts. You can see that it's bending it mainly from the, if we look at this, all right, let's reset both to default so we can see what's going on here. So K1, as we can see, if we push it all the way to the right, it starts doing what's called pin cushioning. Pin cushion is this way, the other direction is barrel distortion. So pin cushioning, again, this is a pin cushion where it bows inward, and barrel distortion is the opposite, which is what we started with, and it goes out. So we want to add enough, basically add pin cushioning to this to the point that it basically straightens it out. However, sometimes when you do this, what you wind up with is that the edge, things start to pin cushion too much in order to get the center straight. And so what you might have to do is go back in with the K2, and you want to pull the edge in just a smidge and correct it, and do a secondary correction. And what that does is it allows you to, between the two of them, it basically, the K2 pulls out in the outer edge a little bit more than the inner edge, and then you wind up with something that tends to look better. And it works best on lenses. It really works well if you have an actual grid and you're filming and your lens is not too distorted. All right, so that's the principle behind it. Now this is using the Nuke model. Okay, the Nuke model is one method of doing it. There's other types of lens correction. PT barrel or PF barrel works basically the same as the Nuke distortion, except for, here's a weird thing, you have to actually, well, if we want to fit it, we can see that it starts off here, except for it works in the opposite. Instead of moving it in a positive to get basically the equivalent of K1 or the K1, we pull it in the opposite direction, and then you pull it back in the other, and yeah, you wind up with this exact same thing. In fact, this works, PF barrel works almost exact same as Nuke, as far, at least in Natron. Not the real Nuke. The real Nuke has, Nuke's actual new modern method works even better. But we don't have access to that. So, all right, so that's what that one would be. The one that I usually think is the most useful, though, is if you can get into measurements and stuff, where we get into this type of thing. If you can actually measure, you get out tape measures, and you know the millimeter of your lenses. For example, this, oh no, this is 6.5, so I can go over here to my focal length, my Todd focal length. I can tell it right here. This is looking for centimeters, so I say this is 0.65 centimeters is the focal length because it's 6.5 millimeter. Right, so we set it to 0.65, and then what we would do is then we could do some distortions. We could just like take and we could pull the distortion back, and if we knew the film, we could tell it what type of film it would be, and we can see this as we start pulling it back. We start winding up. This does not have a K2, it just has distortion, so we have to actually go through and we have to use these other bits and pieces, which is why most people don't use it, which is figuring out where the center of your frame is. Then you'd have to figure out, this is actually the left field of view coordinates. Let's reset that. And oh yes, and if you do left, then you can do the right. Oh wait, that's the bottom, excuse me. Let's do the right. You can do the right, and you can correct it, and these two together sort of form the K1. You'll notice that if it's truly centered, we would just do the same basic value from both ends, but in opposite directions, and then you could do the same to the bottom, and then the same to the top, and that would fix this would do your pin cushion. And then we might say, oh well, in this case it's, now we'd probably go back in the other direction a little bit. But anyway, that would be the equivalent of doing K1, K2. And the other, then you can get into your focus distance, and you can, which is how far away things are, and the distance to the film back if you are dealing with film, and then the lens offset, and then you got anamorphics, you get curvature, quadratic distortion, yada yada yada. This can get really, really accurate, and it really, really helps if you have an actual grid. But we don't need to, because I didn't record a grid with this. What I'm going to do is just chuck this on here, and we're going to reset this to its defaults. Whoa, reading failed to, oh, that's fine. So we go over here to lens distortion. So here we are. We can't actually correct this, you know, using a grid the way we were supposed to. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this by eyeball. Well, we just take this and I'm going to just push this away from the edge, so till it looks more or less linear. So we can see here I'm getting up to the point where this looks like it's a linear line. This looks pretty straight. We can see. Let's try and push it a little beyond, back forth until we find it. I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of here. Looks pretty good. So that fixes the center area here. But as we can see, this looks, well, this line here looks good, and that line looks actually, that line looks a little bit too distorted. I might bring it. No, I think we want, I think it's good here. What we're seeing here is that as we get further away to the edges, we're seeing the opposite. We're seeing the pin cushioning. So we want to do the opposite with the very edges. So that's where this K2 comes in. And we take the K2 and we pull it back a little bit, and we're just trying to pull it back until we get something that basically straightens out the outer edge and keeps the inner edge straight, and we wind up with something. Let's see, we wind up with something, let's find that, I would say somewhere around in there. Looks pretty good. So that's all I would do in this situation. Is it perfect? No, it is not real. Oh, it's but the question is that good enough for 99% of the work? The answer is yes. You could do this. This is all you really need to do a lens correction, is that do those two simple adjustments, and we can get correct the vast majority of it. I mean, let's look at it before. Oh, I don't have it selected. Let's select it. This is before the lens correction. This is after. Before, after. Yes, we change our field of view ever so slightly, but it's still very good. We wind up with something that is a rectilinear image that looks good. And if you saw this on a film screen, you probably never notice it unless you were trying to do VFX on top of it, or certain types of VFX. So anyway, that pretty much tells you exactly what that does. Now, so we saw how to do it. That's how I would do it with this type of thing. And so you can see we've corrected it, and it should look good for the most part. So I do want to look quickly at where we are. We're 26 minutes in. All right. So, and nobody has joined, which makes me a little bit bummed. We have 2 or 3 people in by the time I realized I had screwed up on the audio. So, my apologies to the people who got booted out. And so, yeah, so that's pretty much how you do lens correction. Oh, right. I do want to talk about one other thing that is worthy of noting, which is that, as I say, once you've figured out a lens and have figured out how to just basically undistort a lens and made your lens correction, let's assume this was corrected properly inside of Natron, you don't want to have to redo that every time you make a new video, or you pull in more footage. If I wanted to swap this out, here it's nice and easy because I've already got the lens distortion here. But let's say I want to actually distort it or take this. I don't want to have to recreate this lens distortion node over and over and over again, set my K values, set up everything, or even worse, if I want to, from Nuke, if I went over to the 3D Classic and filled all this information, I didn't want to have to fill that out every time I do a new shot. Just is a lot of extra information that I don't feel like I want to have to deal with. So what I would like to do, I wish there was a way I could say, hey, I know this is how this lens distorts. I know how I want it to be. Is there any way I can take this and just make a map that I can apply that counters my lens distortion all the time? And the answer is yes. In fact, we've dealt with the node that does this already. What do? We go over here. If we look at this, we see this thing called output mode. And if we click on it and we look, we start with image. If we have this thing called ST-map. And lo and behold, that generates this ST-map. Holy moly, we can do an ST-map. Well, does that actually work? Let's find out. Let's take this. We're going to disconnect it from our source. And we're going to take and hit tab. We're going to type in STM for ST-map. Click on that. And this is obviously not our source. This is going to be our UV, is our lens distortion, right? Because that's our image that goes in here. And then we take our map. Well, let's look at it before, all right? And let's connect up our source. So this is before the ST map. Oop, we want the lens. Oh, it disconnected. That's fine. Don't worry about it. The reason that it's doing that is because due to another program that I'm working with, that only will deal with offset frames that are not 24 frames per second. We have to record at 23.97. Anyway, so here's our lens distortion. This is our ST map, and this is our lens distortion. And if we go into our actual ST map with the lens distortion applied as a UV map, remember, this is just an image. I could render that out as a single frame to add whatever resolution I want to. I'm not restricted to 1080p. I could export this map at, 8K if I wanted to. Now, if this lens could resolve 8K's worth of pixels on an 8K camera, or even 12K on certain cameras, you could actually export this map and at that resolution, and it would work. All right, let's see. Does it fix it? Ready? Boom. We wind up with the exact same thing. There's our map. We've just applied it. So this is just an image now. And that we could save out and it will apply. And no matter what happens, I can take this footage. Now, how do I know that it will work? Well, because this is just an image, a still. I can just take in, I can throw in any image in here. Let's take another one. Whoops, I didn't mean to put that in there. Let's take that and let's connect that up. Put that in. And this is totally different footage. But we can see the lens correction kept it exactly the same. So that's the nice thing. If you do a lens correction, I highly recommend, and you do, oh yes, and another thing is you could take it, an ST map, and you can export it from inside of Natron, and you can apply it to inside, I believe you can apply ST maps inside of Blender. I know you can make an ST map inside of Blender, which is really nice because it's just a UV map. So all you got to do is do a UV and then do your lens correction inside of Blender, and you could export it there. Or you could do it inside of, Nuke, or you could do it inside of whatever program you happen to have. Almost anything that can do lens corrections can export an ST map, and that's really, really useful because then you can use it inside of Lightroom. You can use it inside of, I think you can use it inside of Raw Therapy. I'm pretty sure Raw Therapy allows you to pull an ST map in. I hope. I don't know positive on that one, but I'm 99% sure you can do lens corrections in Darktable. You can do it inside of Raw Therapy, and I'm pretty sure you can actually take those and export them to as ST maps and so forth. And if you can't, what you could do is export a UV map, put them in those programs, do your lens correction on a regular image, then swap the image with your ST map or your UV map, and then apply it to the UV map, or take those things and apply it. Then you've got your ST map, and you put it back out, and you can use it. So, needed the rum. It's technically a big grog here. Grog, needed some grog. Which me parchment. All right. So I think that pretty much is going to cover it for today. Really was hoping to have a general discussion with people at this point. I am really sad that this did not go quite as well as I'd hoped. I'll probably change the title inside of the YouTube video. Next time, promised to have the videos for May the 4th. I will have the videos, and I'm going to just show this, and I'll probably show the end result for this in the next episode, which we'll go over and discuss the May the 4th video, the actual the behind the scenes, how it was made, well, or not how it was made, how the lightsaber effect was done for the May the 4th video. So, right. So, thanks for watching and keep on natroning.